Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Get ready to dive into a really fascinating stack of sources today,
Yeah, we got some great stuff.
all zeroed in on physical movement, performance, and, well, fundamentally understanding your own body in perhaps a new way.
That's right. We're going to explore some approaches that, might challenge how you think about things like flexibility, strength, maybe even exercise itself.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at mobility, functional movement,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're going to peel back the layers a bit
Okay.
and look at the often ignored but absolutely critical system known as fascia, your body's connective tissue network. Pretty amazing stuff.
Fascia, right, often overlooked. So we pulled together articles, research notes, insights from, various experts and
A
methodologies.
real mix.
And our mission to kind of cut through the noise, extract the most impactful nuggets of knowledge, the key insights.
Basically give you a shortcut.
Exactly. A
Oh,
shortcut to being seriously well informed about these concepts. And honestly, we found some surprising facts in here.
definitely some eye-openers.
So we're ready to explore them with you.
Let's get started.
So let's kick things off by rethinking some foundational ideas. When you hear flexibility, what comes to mind?
Yeah, like maybe someone folding themselves in half easily.
Right. But the sources we looked at suggest that common perception is, well, it's way too simple, maybe even a bit busted.
They really challenge that idea,
Yeah.
that flexibility is just about how far you can stretch passively.
Uh-huh.
The core concept here seems to be that true flexibility, or maybe better termed, mobility, it requires strength, motor control,
Right.
and resilience throughout the entire range of motion you're exploring, not just at the very end.
So it's not just flopping into a position, it's controlling it.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
whole spectrum. It goes beyond just static stretching to dynamic movement. And critically, from passive,
For something else moves you.
yeah, like a partner, or gravity to active control, where you are generating the movement using your own muscles.
That active part seems key.
And what's fascinating here is the ultimate goal described in some of the material. It's not just like temporary gains after a workout.
Yeah.
No, it's achieving full controlled range of motion easily, habitually, like even first thing in the morning when you wake up.
Wow. Okay. That's a high bar.
It is.
Yeah.
It's presented as this long-term approach,
Yeah.
focusing on potent, specific tools. And they have this philosophy.
Which is
Do it right, do it once, so the results actually stick around.
do it right, do it once. I like that. That flips the script on, constantly needing to stretch just to maintain baseline.
Yeah, less time getting flexible, more time using it.
And here's a detail from one of the methodologies that really stood out to me.
What's that?
The team behind it, they weren't naturally flexible people, like at all.
Oh, interesting.
They learned to achieve these high levels of flexibility as adults. And that's apparently what drove them to figure out the actual reliable mechanisms for increasing range of motion for anyone, not just the, genetically bendy types.
That's a great origin story. Solving a personal problem leads to universal principles. Makes sense.
Yeah. And the notes even mention a connection to the legendary strength coach Charles Poliquin.
Oh, Polygram. Okay, yeah. Known for working with Olympic athletes.
Right. So that lineage suggests a focus on performance, tangible results, not just theory.
Definitely. High-level stuff.
Absolutely. And one source lays out what they call 10 tools for mobility and flexibility training. It really breaks down the how and the why.
Okay, like what kind of tools?
Well, they emphasize the importance of active versus passive training, highlighting that you need strength through the range you gain. It can't just be passive.
Right, so you own that range, which means understanding the anatomy isn't just like looking at charts.
Well,
It's understanding how muscles actually lengthen and contract to control movement, especially at the end range.
got it. What else?
Then there's the nuance of static versus dynamic approaches, knowing when to hold a stretch, when movement is better, and how that interacts with the stretch reflex, that automatic muscle tightening.
Right, that recoil. And they list a bunch of different training types, too.
Yeah, a whole toolkit. Loaded stretching, PIR, that's post-isometric relaxation.
Right, using a contraction to deepen the stretch.
Exactly. Then isometrics, dynamic movements, ballistic stuff like short, powerful bounces, pulsing, specific positioning, passive stretching, PNF, another contraction relaxation technique.
PNF, yeah.
And crucially, how to combine strength training with these mobility methods, not treating them as totally separate things.
Again, reinforcing that connection. Flexibility without strength through range is
Yeah.
fragile, maybe.
Seems like it. And the material also puts a big emphasis on measurement. Like, how do you actually know if you're improving?
Good question.
They list 10 different methods for tracking progress.
10. Wow.
Yeah, and stress using data to individualize your training takes the guesswork out.
Data-driven flexibility, okay. And what about the feel? Like, how should stretching feel? Does it have to hurt?
Ah, the million-dollar question. They dive into the different sensations passive versus active feels different, whether discomfort is necessary,
Hmm.
and what the science actually says about intensity
All right.
versus just spending time in the range. It's not always about pushing into pain.
That's reassuring, getting useful feedback, not just chasing pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also highlight how anatomy's influence on technique is crucial. You absolutely have to respect bone limits.
Can't stretch bone, right.
Right. Especially around complex joints like the hip. You need to modify your position to target the right tissues and get progress without risking injury.
That makes total sense. Tailoring it to your own structure.
And that leads to what feels like a real game changer, according to these sources, individualized assessments.
Okay, tell me more.
It's about finding your specific weak links, your restrictions,
Yeah.
not just following a generic routine. They even talk about using photo analysis to measure your exact joint angles.
So, really precise.
Very. And that personalized assessment then directly informs your individualized program, which is why your routine probably shouldn't look like someone else's.
Because your limitations are unique.
Precisely. They mention 3 different programming strategies depending on your needs and goals. It's about fixing your unique constraints.
And figuring out that sweet spot for how often should you train is more always better.
Apparently not always.
Mm.
The material pushes back against that idea. Suggesting consistency and finding the right frequency for you is key for sustained results.
Which circles back to that do it right, do it once philosophy.
Exactly. Train
Yeah.
effectively so you spend less time just getting the range and more time actually using it in your movements in your life.
So who is this kind of deep dive into mobility really for?
Well, the sources suggest it's for people who want to genuinely improve their own range and understand the scientific why behind it.
Okay.
Coaches who want to level up their skills beyond just generic flows or stretches. And basically, anyone willing to put in focused, diligent work.
And maybe who it's not for.
Maybe not for someone just looking for a quick fix or a passive follow-along video without wanting to engage with the principles.
Right, it requires some thinking.
Yeah. The material lays out a pretty comprehensive structure. Foundational principles, assessment, program design, the actual methods, how to write programs, recovery stuff, even a support form. It's presented as a systematic path.
Okay, so we've dug into gaining that range of motion, but like you said, having the range isn't enough, right? We need to know how to use it effectively, powerfully, in real life.
Exactly. And that brings us nicely to functional movement.
Yeah. When people wonder what's the best way to exercise, functional training offers a really compelling answer. Train movements, not just isolated muscles.
That's the core idea.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is how the sources define functional movement training.
Right.
It's about working several muscle groups together.
Holistically.
Yeah, building strength holistically, improving coordination, and really enhancing that brain-body connection, the neuromuscular control.
Yeah.
Forcing your body to function as a single integrated unit.
Basically, training the way your body is actually designed to move out in the world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the sources strongly contrast this with, say, traditional bodybuilding.
Oh, yeah. How so?
They give some solid reasons why not to train exclusively like a bodybuilder if your goal is everyday fitness and overall robustness.
Like what?
Well, bodybuilding often focuses on isolation, which isn't how we typically move.
Mm.
It can restrict natural range of motion,
Mhm.
potentially shorten or tighten muscles,
Mm.
maybe create imbalances, and often neglects those crucial smaller stabilizer muscles.
I see. So functional training addresses those points.
Directly. It leads to a physique that isn't just visually appealing, but truly fit and toned, because it works the entire system together, synergistically.
Makes sense. The sources highlight 3 big reasons why functional movement training should be like a cornerstone of your physical practice.
Yeah, 3 big ones. The first, and maybe the most critical for a lot of us,
Yeah.
it acts as an injury shield.
Injury shield. I like
Yeah.
the sound of that.
It lowers injury risk significantly by tackling the most common root causes. Functional movements inherently engage your core, right? Addressing core weakness.
Okay.
They use corrective exercises to fix muscle imbalances, rather than just building strength on top of existing asymmetries.
Which could make things worse.
Could, yeah. They account for musculoskeletal quirks, and they drastically improve that neuromuscular control we mentioned.
Neuromuscular control, that's the brain talking to the muscles, coordinating things.
Exactly, your internal coordination. And the sources point out that balance training, which is a key part of functional movement, is actually even more effective for improving this than just strength training alone.
Interesting. So balance work is crucial.
Very. The emphasis is on patiently building a robust, functional foundation first. Because, any fitness goal gets derailed by injury.
Absolutely. Okay, so injury prevention is reason one. What's number two?
It supercharges performance.
In what way?
This is about the transfer effect.
Mm.
Functional training directly translates to real-life activities, real-life strength.
Okay, give me an example.
The sources use a simple but powerful one, doing a deep squat. That's far more beneficial for tasks like picking something heavy up or just getting off the floor
Yeah.
than endless reps on a knee extension machine, no matter how much weight you lift on that machine.
Because a squat is getting off the floor, basically. It mimics the movement.
Precisely. It transfers directly.
Mm.
It also benefits those who are already pretty fit, increasing strength and flexibility even further.
Okay.
And interestingly, because functional movements are often more complex, require more coordination, they can provide greater mental stimulation, maybe even boost cognitive ability compared to simpler, repetitive movements.
So training for life is also training for a sharper mind. Cool.
Seems like it. And the third big reason?
Let me guess. Fat loss.
Bingo. It's a powerful tool for burning fat.
How does that work?
Compound functional movements, think squats, lunges, push-ups, pulls. They activate multiple large muscle groups all at once.
Right.
This not only builds more lean muscle mass over time, which boosts your resting metabolism,
Uh-huh.
but it also recruits a higher percentage of muscle fibers during the workout, which leads to a greater afterburn effect.
Ah, the EPOC effect. Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption.
That's the one. You continue to burn calories at a higher rate after your workout is done.
Which is why shorter, intense functional workouts can be really effective for fat loss.
Totally. The sources use the example of gymnasts often very lean, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they train primarily with incredibly demanding body weight functional movements.
Makes sense. Now, to make sure you're doing this safely, especially when starting out, the sources mention the functional movement screen.
Yeah, the FMS. It's basically a simple system, a series of 7 fundamental movements and 3 clearing tests.
Okay.
And the whole point is to identify any significant movement limitations or imbalances before you start loading things up in a training program.
So it's like getting a movement checkup first. Don't build strength on a shaky foundation.
Exactly that. Find the weak links first.
And what's the foundation itself? The sources mention 7 basic movements.
Yeah, the building blocks, the 7 basic universal movements the human body is capable of.
Pulling,
Like rows or pull-ups,
pushing,
push-ups, overhead presses,
squatting, lunging, hinging.
like a deadlift or kettlebell swing motion.
Yeah, rotating, and gait.
Walking, running.
Yep. Training these core patterns is, as the sources put it, training for life.
Training for life. I like that.
Functional movement training is described as having basically no downside for overall health, performance, and injury prevention.
Okay, so within this world of functional movement, there are specific named methodologies that offer different takes, different angles.
Yeah, different flavors, you could say.
Let's look at a few highlighted in the sources. First up, MovNat.
MovNat. Okay, so this stands for Natural Physical Education.
Natural.
Yeah, its whole philosophy is about reconnecting with our innate human movement capabilities. Everything from, navigating your daily life to moving through complex natural environments.
So moving the way humans evolved to move, pretty much. They have a practice-first approach, often starting in controlled environments, workshops, gyms maybe to build competence and safety, before taking those skills out in nature, which they see as the ultimate training ground, constantly varied, unpredictable.
Okay. Can you give some examples? What kind of skills do they train?
Yeah, the sources give some great concrete examples. Think about things like different kinds of get-ups, getting up off the ground from various positions efficiently.
Useful.
Totally. Balancing walks on narrow or unstable surfaces, logs, beams, rocks, lifting and awkward or heavy objects.
Real-world strength.
Definitely. Various forms of jumping, climbing over, under, or through obstacles, crawling patterns, and running, but specifically on varied and unpredictable terrain.
So these aren't just abstract gym exercises. They're skills rooted in practicality, things you might actually do.
Exactly. Balancing on a log,
Yeah.
carrying a heavy bag, scrambling over something. It's about developing competence and adaptability for the real world.
Got it. Okay, next up, GMB. What's their philosophy?
GMB's approach is centered on exploring what your body is truly capable of.
Exploring capabilities.
Yeah. Their core idea, which is interesting, is that most of us stop learning new fundamental physical skills after childhood.
Mm.
We learn to walk, run, jump, maybe climb a tree. And then that's kind of it for basic skill acquisition. GMB encourages continued physical skill learning throughout life.
That's a cool perspective. Physical development shouldn't just plateau in childhood.
Right. Keep learning new ways to move.
Yeah.
And GMB structures their training sessions with this unique 5-part flow.
Aspire.
Prepare, practice, play, push, and ponder.
Prepare, practice, play, push, ponder. Okay, break that down quickly.
Prepare is a specific warm-up for the skills you'll work on. Practice is breaking down a skill into manageable parts, focusing on quality. Play is exploring movement creatively, improvising within your abilities. Push is adding conditioning or intensity. And ponder
Ponder.
is reflecting on what you learned, what you felt during the session, kind of consolidating the learning.
I really like that ponder phase. It emphasizes the learning aspect, not just doing reps.
Yeah, it's about mindful practice.
Yeah.
The source also offers some specific GMB tips, using the handstand as an example, like what's a clean attempt?
Good question. What is it?
It's simply performing the movement well at your current level, whatever that is. Even if it's just kicking up against a wall for a second, do it well.
Okay.
And the tip is to take a short, mindful break between those clean attempts. Instead of just resting passively, you reflect on the last attempt. Focus your intention for the next one.
Active rest.
Kind of. And they say avoid information overload. Just focus on one coaching cue or feeling per attempt. Don't try to fix everything at once.
Makes sense. And the advice to let go of expectations, that sounds important for skill work.
Hugely. Progress isn't linear, right?
Yeah.
Especially with complex skills like a handstand. Some days are great, some are frustrating. The key is just showing up and engaging in the practice. That's the progress.
Consistency over perfection.
Exactly. And also, knowing when to call it a day. Stopping before your form totally breaks down, ideally ending on a good attempt. That helps build good habits.
Prevents reinforcing bad movement patterns.
Right. And for handstands specifically, they recommend focusing initially on just holding for time in a supported position like feet on a box or against a wall to build foundational endurance and strength. Don't immediately chase the perfect freestanding line.
Build the base first.
Yeah, makes working on the finer points, the aesthetics, much easier later on.
Got it. Okay, and finally, true to form. This was developed by Eric Goodman, right? Some people might know it through like Ben Greenfield mentioning it.
That's the one. Foundation training. This methodology has a really specific focus, strengthening the entire posterior muscle chain.
Posterior chain, so the back of the body.
Exactly. Shoulders, the entire back, glutes, hamstrings, calves. The central idea is to build strength in these key areas to properly support your structure.
How does that help?
The goal is to shift the burden of support away from potentially vulnerable joints, like your lower back or knees, and onto these strong, stabilizing muscles, particularly the deep core muscles, and that powerful posterior chain, like the erector spinae along the spine and the glutes.
So instead of your joints taking the hit, your big back body muscles are holding you up and powering movement.
Precisely. Building robust support from the back body. The sources mention the founder exercise as a signature move in this system.
The founder. Okay.
It's kind of hard to describe perfectly without seeing it, but imagine a deep hip hinge movement, really emphasizing length through the spine and actively engaging that entire back line of the body to create tension and structural support.
I've heard it's surprisingly intense, especially along the hamstrings and back.
It can be, yeah. It teaches you to use those muscles correctly. And the note that someone like Ben Greenfield integrates these kinds of moves daily even, like in a sauna or while traveling.
Yeah.
That really speaks to how these foundational principles can be woven into your life, not just stuck in a formal gym session.
Right. Applying them anywhere, anytime. Interesting.
Very adaptable.
Okay, now, let's shift gears completely. We've talked about movement patterns, strength, control. But let's look underneath all that at something that might be the real unsung hero, fascia.
Ah, fascia. Yeah.
Have you ever, really considered the role of your body's connective tissue? It's everywhere, but
often ignored, right?
yeah.
The sources call fascia the Cinderella of body tissues.
Cinderella. Why?
Because for so long, in traditional anatomy, it was just seen as passive packing material. Stuff to be cut away to see the important things like muscles and organs.
Wow, okay.
But it's absolutely vital. It forms what some now call the organ system of stability. It's way, way more than just like plastic wrap around the muscles.
So forget those old anatomy charts showing muscles floating in space.
Pretty much. Fascia is presented as this one vast interconnected web, like one big net or even one interconnected ocean that runs throughout your entire body
Hmm.
seamlessly. Yeah, holding everything together. Muscles are like fish swimming within this net. Organs are like jellyfish floating in it. The body is presented as a single connected unity, not separate parts.
That's a radically different picture.
It really is. And this interconnectedness is crucial. Here's something truly surprising from the sources. Most injuries
Yeah.
are not primarily muscle tears. They're connective tissue injuries, fascial injuries.
Whoa, hold on. Most injuries are fascial, not muscular.
That's what the research suggests. We spend so much time worrying about pulling a muscle, but it's often the surrounding or underlying fascial web that's actually damaged or restricted.
That completely reframes how you think about pain and recovery.
Doesn't it? And here's another fact that frankly blew my mind when I read it.
Okay.
There are 10 times more sensory nerve endings in your fascia than there are in your muscles.
10 times. Seriously.
10 times, which radically shifts our understanding of things like proprioception and kinesthesia.
Proprioception. That's your body's sense of where it is in space.
Right, your internal GPS. And kinesthesia is your sense of movement. The sources suggest these senses are primarily rooted in your fascia, not your muscles.
So when you feel your body moving, or feel tight, or feel stable, you're predominantly feeling the tension, stretch, and feedback from that fascial web.
That seems to be the implication.
Yep.
Mind-blowing, right?
Totally. The sources touch on the makeup of fascia, the extracellular matrix, or ECM.
Yeah, the stuff between the cells. It's basically a mix of fibers, tough collagen, stretchy elastin,
Okay.
a gooey hydrating glue made of complex sugars called gags, which hold on to water.
Like a gel?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of water itself. That composition is key
Why?
because it's why fascia can appear to stretch. It's not just the fibers lengthening that much, it's more about the fibers sliding past each other on that hydrated, gooey matrix.
Ah, like lubricated sliding.
Exactly. And injuries often happen when the tissue is forced to deform or stretch faster than those fibers can slide and rearrange, especially if the tissue is dehydrated and sticky.
Hydration is key for fascia then.
It seems critical. The concept of tensegrity is also introduced.
Tensegrity. Sounds complex.
It's a cool concept. The idea is that the fascial net, which is always under a certain amount of tension, actually holds the bones together. The fascia pulls inward as the bones push outward.
Like a suspension bridge.
Sort of. It's this system of balance, tension, and compression that determines the body's overall shape and structural integrity. It's not just bones stacked on top of each other.
Fascinating. And the hopeful part.
The hopeful part is that the ECM, the fascia, is dynamic. It's not fixed. It can remodel itself based on the demands placed upon it.
Like what kind of demands?
Training, injury, gravity, habitual postures, movement patterns, maybe even, some suggest, emotional states.
Wow.
This remodeling capacity is the biological basis for why things like yoga or deep tissue massage or foam rolling can actually create lasting structural changes over time.
Because you're influencing how the fascia remodels itself.
Exactly. Which brings us to fascial fitness.
Hmm.
How do you specifically train this system alongside your muscles and nervous system?
Right. To prevent injury, repair damage, build real resilience.
Yeah. The sources emphasize this is a rapidly evolving area of research, but there are some key findings emerging.
Okay, let's hear them.
They share 3 surprising findings about training the neuromyofascial web effectively. Finding #1. Specific training can dramatically enhance fascial elasticity.
Elasticity. But I thought fascia was tough, like gristle.
It is tough, yes, but it's also incredibly elastic when trained properly. Think of it like a high-performance spring or a Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, it can store and release energy very, very quickly and efficiently. This elastic recoil is absolutely crucial for fast, cyclical movements like running, jumping, throwing.
So it helps you conserve energy.
Massively. It lets you use less actual muscle power, burning less fuel, for the same output. But importantly, this spring effect is not really utilized in slow, steady movements like, say, cycling or slow weightlifting.
Got it. So for runners or jumpers, training that fascial spring is key for efficiency and power. What kind of training does that?
According to the sources, things that are in our bouncing movements, think plyometrics, skipping, light bouncing. Also, preparatory counter movements, that little dip you do before a jump. That pre-stretches the fascia to load the spring.
Okay. And what's out for elasticity?
Trying to generate power solely through big, slow muscle contractions for these quick movements, or using jerky, uncontrolled movements that don't allow the recoil to work properly.
Makes sense. Okay. Finding #2.
Finding #2. The fascial system thrives on variation, not just mindless repetition.
Variation. How so?
Well, isolating muscles with machines, or doing the exact same movement pattern over and over in the same plane, that's less effective for conditioning the surrounding fascial tissues, the interconnected web.
Why?
Because loading the system in only one specific way can actually make it weaker and less adaptable when it's suddenly confronted with different, varied, or unpredictable movements in real life.
Ah, so specificity can be limiting for the fascia?
For the systemic resilience, yes.
Mm.
So what kind of training is in for promoting this adaptable fascia?
Let's hear it.
Whole body movements that integrate multiple joints and planes,
Hmm.
initiating movement from your core, your center, proximal initiation, and adaptive movement.
Adaptive movement, like what?
Think the spontaneous, varied, responsive movements you see in things like parkour, climbing, dancing, even just playing, responding to the environment.
Okay, and what's out then?
Endless, identical repetitions, especially on machines.
Sure.
Always training at maximal loads without variation, and always training with the exact same tempo or rhythm. Variety is key.
Variety and adaptability. Got it. And finding #3.
This circles back to that amazing fact about the nerves. Proprioception and kinesthesia are primarily fascial, not muscular.
The 10 times more receptors thing still blows my mind.
Right, reaffirming that. The sources explain that ligaments, which are dense fascia, tension automatically with muscles throughout the range, not just passively at the end range. Nerve endings in the fascia adapt to the overall forces and tensions distributed through the tissue web, not just within neat anatomical muscle borders. And sensors near the skin surface also play a really important role in detecting and regulating movement.
Feeling things through the skin influences movement control.
Seems so. So how do we train this fascial awareness, this sensory system? What's in?
Yeah, what works?
The sources suggest things like skin and surface tissue stimulation. One interesting example given was a weightlifter using a simple vegetable brush on their skin before lifting,
A vegetable brush? Seriously?
apparently, to wake up those superficial receptors. Also, actively directing your attention to feeling the subtle tension, stretch, and glide within your fascial tissues, not just focusing on muscle burn or contraction.
Tuning into the fabric itself.
Exactly. And cultivating, as they put it, sensuous body activity and acuity,
Moving with awareness.
exploring sensation, kind of like a cat.
Moving like a cat. I love that image. Fluid, aware, responsive.
Right. And what's up for training proprioception?
What should we avoid?
Training with a purely isolated muscle orientation, ignoring the surrounding tissues, or focusing solely on the idea that proprioception comes only from receptors deep inside the joints. It's much more widely distributed.
Wow. Okay, so understanding fascia, it really does fundamentally change how we view the body, movement, training, seeing it as this holistic, interconnected, incredibly responsive system.
Absolutely. It ties everything together.
So let's try and weave these threads together now. How do these big concepts, this redefined mobility, functional movement, and this crucial understanding of fascia, how do they all connect?
Well, it's like building a really capable, resilient physical structure, right?
Okay.
Mobility and flexibility, understood correctly, give you the necessary range of motion. That's the potential space your structure can move within safely and effectively.
The available workspace.
Exactly. Then, functional movements are like the blueprints. They show you how to use that space effectively and efficiently to perform natural, powerful actions that transfer to life.
The how-to guide for movement.
Yeah. And fascia. Fascia is the underlying material science. It's the incredibly responsive, interconnected biological web.
The fabric itself.
The fabric itself, it enables these movements, provides stability, stores and releases that elastic energy we talked about, and it's the source of so much of our proprioceptive awareness, our body senses, kind of the biological why behind the success of functional training for resilience and performance.
So fascia allows that range of motion gained through mobility work to be strong, controlled, and efficient when used in functional patterns.
Beautifully put, yeah. The sources even apply this interconnected view to something really specific, like proper running techniques. Looking at the head-over-foot method.
Head over foot. Okay, what's the idea there?
It's presented as this fundamental ground-based movement principle, focusing on balance during locomotion, like walking or running.
Uh-huh.
It basically requires maintaining your head directly over your stand foot for optimal stability, all while keeping a neutral spine. You can feel this if you just try and lift one foot off the ground right now.
Yeah, you automatically shift.
Your head naturally adjusts over the standing foot to maintain balance. That instantaneous adjustment relies heavily on that finely tuned fascial awareness and neuromuscular control.
Makes sense. What specific running elements did they mention?
Things like using a leg swing lunge pattern to encourage hip mobility, actively tucking the hips forward slightly for core engagement and better pelvic alignment. Optimizing foot landing, often landing slightly outside and rolling inward naturally.
Yeah.
Encouraging internal hip rotation during the gait cycle. Maintaining active ankle dorsiflexion.
Pulling the toes up.
Right. And, crucially, addressing existing imbalances first, like stiff hips, because those will prevent you from executing the technique safely and efficiently. You need the mobility foundation.
It all connects back.
Mhm.
Mobility enables the functional pattern. Fascia provides the sense and spring.
Exactly. And the sources also point to the physical arts, things like
Yeah.
dance, martial arts, yoga,
Yeah.
as incredible examples of practices that inherently embrace diverse movement patterns, cultivate that mind-body awareness, and express physical capability in complex ways. And understanding the principles we've covered, the importance of functional patterns, training the fascial system for elasticity and awareness, ensuring you have the controlled mobility needed that can be invaluable for enthusiasts of these arts.
Oh, so.
It can help them participate at a higher level, potentially prevent common injuries associated with repetitive strain or extreme ranges, and maybe avoid burnout by training the body more holistically, addressing the whole system.
So this deep dive, it's not just about giving you, the listener, a list of exercises or stretches.
No, not at all.
It's more about providing a structured framework for understanding the why behind effective physical training, helping you move beyond thinking about isolated parts
Right.
and start seeing your body as the complex, interconnected, amazing system it actually is.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We really have.
From, redefining what flexibility truly means and how to train it for results that actually last.
The do it right, do it once idea.
Right. Exploring the power and principles of functional movement training for life, not just the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then diving into that critical, often overlooked role of fascia and how understanding it fundamentally changes our view of the body's capabilities, its needs, how it feels.
That fascial piece feels like a paradigm shift for a lot of people.
I think it is. The key takeaway from this whole deep dive seems pretty powerful and clear.
Which is?
Your body is not just a collection of isolated parts stuck together. It's a highly interconnected system, a web.
A web, yeah.
And to train it effectively for health, for resilience, for performance, you really need to consider not just individual muscles or single exercises,
Yeah.
but the whole structure, how its natural movements are performed efficiently, and that incredible adaptable network of connective tissue, the fascia, that holds it all together and enables graceful, powerful, resilient movement.
Considering the whole system.
Exactly. And this understanding, this appreciation of your body's natural design and its interconnectedness, it's more than just interesting information, isn't it? It's potentially transformative.
It could change how you approach everything physical.
Right. So here's something for you, the listener, to maybe ponder as you go about your day.
Okay.
Knowing that your body is this integrated, adaptable web, this system, how will this perspective change the way you think about movement? How might it influence the way you choose to exercise, or maybe even just how you move through the world, sit, stand, walk?
That's a great question to leave people with. How does this new lens change your personal approach?
Yeah.
Take some time, reflect on the insights we've pulled from this deep dive into the source material. Lots to think about.